Hello and welcome. We're coming to you from the Greenwich Juice Bar and Cafe here in Highland, Indiana. With us today, our guest is Dr. Mario Roberto Mendoza, who's on the telephone from New York City. Welcome to our show.
Thank you so much, Bill and Callie, for having me on. I'm humbled by the invitation and happy to be on the phone with you guys.
Well, we are truly honored to have you as our guest today.
Yes, that is very true. And it's equally as impressive as how you came to be here, as well as your educational career and your professional career. As we were talking before the show, I think we would have had you on regardless of your what we're about to talk about today, because it's just an amazing professional career. So let's start out and talk about Mario. Was born in El Salvador and immigrated from El Salvador to the U.S. at 8 years of age in October of 1981. He crossed the U.S.-Mexican border on foot with a coyote as an undocumented immigrant 24 hours after his mother and brother crossed on foot themselves, also with the coyote. His mother was previously a teacher in El Salvador who fought for equal rights and pay for her fellow co-workers. The Salvadorian government labeled her group's work as communist and consequently threatened to be killed along with Mario and his brother if they did not flee the country. Dr. Mario Roberto Mendoza is a clinical anesthesiologist and a medical director within a global pharmaceutical company. Dr. Mendoza earned his degree in chemistry from SUNY College of Old Westbury and his master's in organic chemistry from the University of Illinois at Urbana-Champaign. He also earned his MD from the University of Illinois at Chicago College of Medicine. Amazing. Again, as I told you, we would probably have you on just to discuss your medical career and your scientific career. Absolutely amazing. So, welcome again to our show, and why don't you give us a little bit more deeper information about your background and how you came to be, and also about the same project that you're working on now.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, Bill and Callie, for having me on, and folks in the audience as well for their live and tuning in. I appreciate really the platform to hopefully be a part of supporting undocumented immigrant stories and data and giving a voice to the voiceless. But I did want to say, I don't recognize that person in the introduction. I don't think that's me. I'm very humbled by all of that. So I think, Bill, maybe you enhanced that. I'm just way too overwhelmed with your compliments. So
I don't think so.
Well, it speaks to the story. I am sorry we're embarrassing you, but it for what you've gone through speaks to the project you're working on now, and it really again I'm just amazed and very humbled that you're with us today.
And same here. I'm honored to be on. So I'm currently in NYC in New York, and I quit my job in biotech about 1 month ago, and I decided to do that to concentrate fully on LifeUNDocumented.org, a nonprofit organization that's currently or about to initiate a nonprofit registration process. The core mission of LifeUndocumented.org is really threefold, and that is to deliver and to humanize the undocumented immigrant, and to deliver the stories of their journey here from their country of origin, to put a face to these stories, if you will, although I would do this in a de-identified way, especially with the current environment, to make sure that their privacy is protected. But, instead of speaking to the 11 million undocumented immigrants that are estimated to be in the United States, out of the total 45 million total immigrants, I'd like to really discuss this in a way that is more realistic, and that is to deliver on their human story, that these are folks that have lives in their country of origin, usually they're fleeing some type of violence, whatever the source may be, where there is gang violence, domestic violence, or other, and they're seeking often or running away from life-threatening circumstances and seeking a better life here in the U.S. And unfortunately, those are current reasons, although we don't know for sure, and I'll address that in a bit in terms of the core mission for the nonprofit organization. There's some literature on this in terms of families crossing over now, but these reasons are, for the most part, unchanged from our reasons for coming over in 1981 and being here in the United States, that was briefly mentioned in the bio. We, in fact, did not want to leave El Salvador. We left our entire family there. We're fortunate enough to have good friends here, but we left all of our family, and my mom did not want to leave El Salvador. She wanted to stay there. She had her career there. She was just a few semesters away from finishing the equivalent of a bachelor's degree, actually, in El Salvador. And she had already taught for 20 years in El Salvador prior to coming here. And she, of course, sacrificed that and wasn't able to fulfill her follow her profession here. But going back to the core of the nonprofit, that is to humanize these stories, right? They're not just 11 million numbers, they're 11 million lives, families, and 5 degrees of freedom in terms of effect, and all these separations that are happening now, and people that are leaving their country of origin. And let's not forget, we're on that note, that it's not just from Mexico and Central America. That's almost 3/4 of the undocumented immigrants, of the 11 million that come, but about 15% come from Asia. And so we're really talking about global migration, whether it's documented or undocumented, in this case undocumented. So again, humanizing a story. The other part of that is, and that's to help add to the media rhetoric and balance out the media rhetoric, the undocumented immigrant discussion, which right now is pretty biased and not balanced at all. So I want to add these stories into that discussion. The other core mission is to then collect and de-identify data and to speak to these stories. And why is it that these folks fled their country of origin? How did they come here? How long have they been here? And what is it that they're doing here? How are they positively contributing to this country? And I'd like to follow up and really follow the effects that they've had on their life from being in the U.S. and conversely, the effect that they've had and the input they've had into society here, the differences that they're making here, because I'm definitely not a lone wolf. There are many more like me, and I'd like to speak to that through data and hopefully then help support immigration policy, and even better, to affect immigration policy that is not based on fear and false imagining, but on data, and especially long-term follow-up data for undocumented immigrants. And that's, in effect, the core mission of LifeUndocumented.org.
Brilliant.
Yeah, and I will speak to this now, although really meant to intro with this, but now could not be a better time, I feel, and I think we feel that it's we've arrived at a point in our political discourse that we really do need to make sure that people know, when we're discussing immigration, that there is a human face to it, that there is a human outcome. There's people that just the same as everyone, we're all human, and there's brothers, sisters that are and we look back at our history ourselves. People flocked to the United States escaping persecution in the 1800s and early 1900s, the potato famine, the raiding of Poland, and World War II created a mass exodus over to the United States for protection, to seek a better life.
What's at the bottom of the Statue of Liberty, and that unless you're a Native American, you all come from immigrant roots.
So with just what we see as your project is talking about people and giving the history of why they're here and why they're seeking citizenship. And again, I bring up, I'm sorry for embarrassing you again, but I bring up your bio and calling people's memory that you were an undocumented person at one time, undocumented immigrant, but yet you look at your contributions and at a scientific level, it's just amazing. And I think that needs to be called to mind. You know, these are very hard-working people that are coming to the country and to come here to seek a better life and without persecution. And
to
so
see their children grow up and be happy and fulfill their dreams as well.
for every person that crosses over, there's a mother wishing a better life for her children, a father wishing a better life for his family. And you know, it's all should be wrapped up in that. That's why we're excited to hear about this project. And when you contacted me, it's like, wow. And I say, this has to, you contacted us before the horrifying incidents of this weekend. It's, you know, we had, you know, but I guess that this has no better time to have this conversation now than after those, although there's never a good time to discuss those events that happened this weekend, but it just brings a heavier weight onto this conversation. So I think all things happen for a reason, and the fact that you reached out to us, we're absolutely humbled.
No, and I am even more so really speaking to this, and I'd like to make a couple of points, and I think one of them will definitely overlap with what just happened a couple of days ago, and I feel it's not good enough to say my thoughts and prayers are with those folks. I think action needs to be taken, and we know where that needs to come from in our government, and that's part of the point that I want to make. It's nonprofit. It's not just to get on the soapbox. It's really to drive action forward, because love is not a feeling, love is action. And the reason I say love is because LifeUndocumented.org will not be a source of negativity. I don't believe in fighting some of the evil behavior and some of the evil rhetoric and unkind rhetoric that's out there now in our own country with more evil and more aggression. I think it needs to be counteracted and corrected, certainly, but it needs to be counteracted with loving action and with emphasis on action. And what I mean by that is, to your point, it's easy to treat the other, if you will, quote unquote the other, like less than human or subhuman, and dehumanize the other. We know that this has happened in history before. It's not the first time in the world that this happened. Once you dehumanize the other, then, and if they're not considered human, then you can do whatever you'd like to that non-human. And so you start to call them names like criminals, rapists, and murderers to attempt to dehumanize this other, and effectively try to, at the end, do away with, through whatever means necessary, whatever separation necessary, with this other. And so I think that leads to some of the events that have happened recently. Unfortunately, those people that were killed. So part of that, in trying to correct that and bringing to light what the other looks like, is speaking to them. And so that's part of what I'd like to do with the nonprofit. That's the active and the action aspect of what I'd like to do, and that is to collect their stories, to collect this, and to speak to these stories, deliver these stories, of course, in a de-identified way, so no individual would be, their privacy would be maintained, but to humanize these stories, because it's easy to destroy something that you think is non-human. And the other point I wanted to make is that this data, what we call in medicine actually real-world evidence, real-world data, I want to apply that to the immigration space. This has not been done before. There was one cross-sectional study in the early 90s, but there was no follow-up on that, really. And I don't know how comprehensive it was, to be honest with you. And it looked into the results of the 1986 Immigration Reform and Control Act under President Reagan. And so part of humanizing the story is speaking to their journey and what it is that they're doing, and I call that, for lack of a better term, data. So that is part of the core mission of the nonprofit. You know, I'd like to also state that folks are really not aware. They assume in this dehumanized way, you know, that there's an invasion here in the United States of undocumented immigrants. And if you look at the data that is out there that's based on the U.S. Census and the American Community Survey, you'll see that immigration has actually decreased in the last decade, mainly from Mexico and Central America. I can't speak for Asia, although I've seen numbers in the literature where there's an increase. Contradicting, I think, some of the media rhetoric and making us feel that they are invading, right, undocumented immigrants, again, dehumanizing our country. And so that's simply not true. So not only will data humanize people, but it will also make a better argument for what kind of immigration policy approach that this country needs to take and all the good that these undocumented immigrants are doing.
Yeah, dude, and to go back to a point you made and to make sure people know that may be listening to this, you do give some assurances that people come forward with their story, and you know what? I guess if I were in their shoes, I'd be very leery because our administration is espousing that, you know, that they're enforcing immigration laws aggressively with ICE, and you know, I guess if I were undocumented, I try to do everything I could do without becoming public. So can you speak to that? What are some of the assurances that you provide these people to come forward with their story?
Right, absolutely, and thanks for that, Bill. That's a really important point, something that is constantly on my mind, and it's a pretty simple approach actually, and that is that in collecting these stories, you know, one at a time, as I have been doing, and then delivering and speaking to these stories, you know, I may refer to individual stories and journeys, but I'll do that in a de-identified way. So I wouldn't use personal identifiers such as real name, date of birth, any kind of physical address whatsoever. But things like country of origin and the year that the undocumented immigrant and perhaps the family came over just like we did. That story needs to be delivered. And what is it that they're doing now, right? What work are they involved in now? What are the ways in which they're contributing to society once they're here? And how has their life changed? And what has their experience firstly been like here? What trauma have they suffered? All of that needs to be spoken to and come to light without identifying any single person or household, and that's the way that I plan to do it, and that's exactly how the U.S. Census does it, actually. They triple de-identify their data and their stories, if you will, and their households, and they interview somewhere between 50 to 70,000 households, the census responses that they get. SAMHSA, or the Substance Abuse Mental Health Services Administration, does the same thing about 60,000 households. They do it nationwide, and they extrapolate that to 325 million Americans in terms of exclusion, so that no data can point to any household or address in any way, shape, or form. But really getting that story out there from actual undocumented immigrants as opposed to what's being published now. And I'm not criticizing that. I think it's great that there is this data out there from various sources, but it's not real world immigrant data, as I like to call it. And that's what I'd like to collect, in part because, as for our story, to speak a little bit more to that, you know, why are we here? We're here simply because my mother received a phone call, by the way, at her school, and she happened to not be there that day, teaching. She was told that someone, whoever that was, from the government, called her school and they said, if you don't leave, we're going to kill you and your two sons. It's totally straight. And they said, you need to leave within a month's time. And she, of course, my mom is, you know, in a good way, pretty, how do we say, headstrong. And she said, no, I'm absolutely not going to leave my family, and I'm going to fight back. But teachers were being killed. They were being murdered throughout the country. They were being found dead. Of court, and so after months, our extended family urged us to go for our own safety, and that's the only reason we left. We had no intention of leaving. I am forever grateful, by the way, for the opportunities that I've had here, and humbled by them, and I'm blessed to have those opportunities that I'm living now, and I feel that in part I've given back to this country as well in serving the uninsured. As an anesthesiologist, I treated people at county hospitals throughout my training, and even once I was an attending once there, I also treated people that were uninsured and had no funds to pay. So it's not that it was all paid. I don't want the audience to feel that. I also have given back in that way, at least medicine, and now I really fully want to give back. And the core of why I started this again is simply out of love and because I want to speak up for undocumented immigrants, and I want to do that in an informed way through real stories instead of false imaginings of fear, what I see out there now.
Beautiful.
Yeah, and that's true. And I wanted to go back and call to mind, there may be some folks out there that have been gone through the legalization process and gotten their green cards, and they could contact you as well to tell their story prior to them being documented, if you will.
Absolutely. I like to engage folks, especially on that note, folks that went through the 1986 Immigration Reform Control Act, IRCA, or otherwise known as the Amnesty Act. And by the way, a little bit on that, and I would like to comment, if it's okay with you guys, a bit on quote-unquote what people call, legal immigration. There's a large number of folks, perhaps even that will be listening to this, and may feel, well, these undocumented immigrants, I understand a lot of them, or maybe all of them, have left life-threatening or emergent circumstances, and they needed to flee for their lives. However, I, as a legal immigrant, have been waiting patiently in line to get my green card, and why should they cut in line? And so I've heard this a lot of times, and I've heard it often, and I don't need to push back on that, because I think that is a fair point to make. That speaks to really how do we fix. I am a doc after all, so I use the medical word, a triaging of immigrants, whether documented and trying to find a legal path here, or coming here undocumented. How do we triage that, right? How do we blend that together so that it becomes an effective pathway, so that the legal immigration pathway is not hurt by the undocumented immigration pathway to citizenship, whether it's through DACA, the temporary protected status like TPS, which have about 800,000 and about 300,000 respectively, about 10% of the undocumented immigrants of the 11 million, roughly 1.1 and 1.2 million, that fit within DACA and TPS. And let me remind the audience, DACA, at least for now, there is no pathway to citizenship for folks under that DACA protection, let's call it. So I think that is a fair point. I don't need to fight back on that. I think that is something that needs to be addressed and fixed for folks that are choosing legal pathways or documented pathways, if you will. And so, another point on that is we applied for political asylum. My mother applied for political asylum in a work visa, and we were denied. But you can imagine when a mother has her two cubs, not to reference the Chicago Cubs, by the way, that's a little bit of a side reference to Chicago, but she has her two sons, and she's being told your sons are going to be killed. How could she possibly be denied political asylum and then still stay in that country? And she had, at that point, she needed to flee. So she had no other choice but to come here undocumented, but she did try the quote-unquote legal pathway first, absolutely. And Bill, I'm sorry, I think I strayed away from your initial question that you just asked. I don't think I addressed it. So remind me of the question again.
No, it was more of a statement that I'm just calling to mind that there are plenty of people that are now documented, that gotten their green cards, but behind those, there's your story. They had a very similar story to yours, and I was just calling to mind that they should contact you as well, because their stories, even though they're now documented, have same validity. So, I'm just trying to encourage everyone to go ahead and contact you to join in this program.
Sure. Even those who are now citizens.
Right.
No, absolutely, Bill and Callie. And, a couple of notes on that, and thanks for reminding me. I am nothing except a sample size, to be a study nerd here, a sample size of one. I have no power without the voices of undocumented immigrants or previously undocumented immigrants that maybe now have the green card or citizenship. If they don't engage with me, I understand that they are fearful, but I want them to know that I will drive this until my last day, and I want to drive this to effectively speak up for and try to protect undocumented immigrants in my own way, to give a voice. I did want to point out that since the 1986 Amnesty Act, there has been no other effort to develop a pathway to citizenship for undocumented immigrants. Neither has there been any other Amnesty Act since 1986. And we know for a fact that roughly about 1 million immigrants come across the border every year. Right? And we also know that they add to the economy. There's data on this, by the way, and that in the short term, some low-skilled jobs are taken by undocumented immigrants. But in the long term, there's no change on that job market. As a matter of fact, because there's more purchasing power and taxes being put in by undocumented immigrants, because roughly, from U.S. Census data, about 60% of undocumented immigrants pay their taxes. Again, going back to my point, the reason we don't know this is because no real-world immigrant data has been collected to this point, besides one study in the early 90s, no follow-up. And that's exactly what I want to get at in part, is to collect this data to help me and to help the organization speak up for undocumented immigrants. But, there has been another Amnesty Act, and really, since 1790, if you look at all the immigration acts, there have been acts of exclusion, specifically for Chinese immigrants, twice, to exclude people from that area. And the Amnesty Act for citizenship, green card opportunities, there's been a few, maybe 2 to 4 acts, since 1790 to today, and those are all for folks that serve in the U.S. military services for their spouses and extended family to be able to apply for a green card. But there has been no other act to address the undocumented immigrants or any of those countries of origin since 1986. And again, the 1986 Act was not meant to be an act of love. It was just under intense pressure. It was really meant to control the border, and so they allowed 1.8 million of the poor undocumented immigrants to apply for green cards and a pathway to citizenship. But it was meant to punish businesses that hired undocumented immigrants. But under President Reagan, again, with a large amount of social pressure, it turned into a quote-unquote amnesty act.
And now come forward, this administration now is wanting to create another, I guess you would call it a throttle to the whole immigration system, and that is for people seeking asylum, that they have to show or prove that they have actually sought asylum at another country prior to arriving at the U.S. border. Now, what is your comment and feeling about that?
Right, absolutely. I have some initial thoughts on this, and not to shamelessly plug in my documentary. I really don't mean to do that, but in my documentary on the website, I point to and I speak of the word globally responsive, and every word that I chose in the documentary, I chose carefully, and there's meaning behind that. And what I mean by globally responsive, I don't know if you remember just a short time ago with the Syrian refugee situation and the horrific things that were happening there, if there was a slight, if you will, not comprehensive global response, and that a few countries agreed to absorb some of those immigrants. And so, I don't think that putting in a requirement like that is necessarily the most effective approach. I do think not necessarily with the U.S.-Mexico bordering crossing folks, which, by the way, are not all people from Mexico and Central America. As I mentioned before, there are people from Asia and Southeast Asia that come to the border as well. I've spoken to a few of them here, even though, small group of people. I'm hearing that as well. There needs to be a global response to migration as a whole on this earth, because due to government instability, political unrest, like in South America, Middle East, and even parts of Europe, the economy, violence, genocide, there's going to be and has always been global migration. And so we really need to decide as a global community, how will we address this? Especially the 8 most powerful countries, how should they address it, right? So I think, I just read a quote from Toni Morrison. It said, it is the duty of the folks that once they have a little bit of power or a lot of power, their duty is to empower others. And so that's exactly how I feel about LifeUndocumented.org, is empower others through their story. I think having any type of prerequisite for now, acutely in the short term, may just serve to defer and delay application and not really do anyone any good, and perhaps stay in this immigration detention centers in limbo under, and I'm understating, suboptimal, inhumane conditions at these detention centers. So that's not ideal either. I do think, though, long term, there needs to be a global response to migration, no matter the source, no matter where they're emigrating or the country of origin or their host country. I think in the case of the U.S. and the policy by the administration, I haven't heard any concrete plan for a humane, data-based approach to immigration policy across the border.
Right, and again, we've seen over the past couple of years more of a trend to seek a nationalist point of view as opposed to a globalistic point of view, which in and of itself has a lot of dangers because it calls people to ignore such things as climate change and the impact that migration and immigration have on climate change, and that's the danger as far as I see it. Is when we become nationalist and ignore outside of our borders, we actually create more of a danger for the earth as it exists.
I agree completely, and I think that we're all in a difficult situation in that all of these immigration policy decisions, from what I see, because they're based on, again, and not criticizing the data, I'm thankful that it's being published by several institutions, and I think they do great work. But what we really need is real-world immigrant data so that we know exactly what folks were doing prior to coming here, what are they doing here, their reasons for fleeing. We know that they're largely unchanged from the 70s and 80s and the wave that I came across, and that they were escaping life-threatening circumstances. They still are. We were escaping violence from a civil war in El Salvador, but now they're escaping gang violence. And so I did see literature now that there's an increase in families coming across as opposed to just individuals. But we came across as a family. And by the way, my mom's a great mom. She didn't need for me to run over the border for 12 hours overnight across the desert and across the Tijuana airport. I remember helicopters overhead with lights searching for us. We had to stop running in the dark bushes and sand. I was exhausted. I was crying. My legs hurt. At some point, I am grateful for that unnamed coyote who at some point picked me up because I couldn't go on anymore as a 7-year-old. I was exhausted from running all night. And I was scared, and so he did help me, but he couldn't carry me, so I just had to keep going. And I think you mentioned this before, and there's a publication on this, again, not real-world evidence or data, but it speaks to the fact that the immigrants that come here, for the most part, they self-select in that they have a high amount of grit or resilience. Because only folks that, imagine, take the risk of almost drowning through rivers My mom had a gun pointed at her more than once throughout that journey, and she had resilience and grit and didn't give up because essentially she was running to save her life and the life of her boy. And so, I'd like to remind people that the decisions being made now are without these stories coming to life, which is in essence data, if you will. These stories and these journeys speak to truth and what is actually happening, and that truth will help better educate and inform our immigration policy decision making. Right now, it is being informed, again, by fear, anxiety, and false imagining of the untrue.
Yeah, and fear is a powerful tool that unfortunately is being weaponized now, and that's the unfortunate. Some of these conversations can't take part. We don't examine the data that has been covered, or not purposely covered, but has stopped the collection of data, because there's a fear. And I think probably out of jealousy, there is a fear of not really going and investigating that data. So what a better way that we can look at this and have a tool that we can analyze migration, why people are coming here, why they're escaping. Again, I remember something my father used to say about, when he talked about World War II and the Nazi regime, the Japanese, and how, if people come to this country, it's for a reason. And if we shut off those floodgates, are we really helping destroy Nazism or these dictatorships? If we bring people in that run from them, we help to deplete their reason for existence. And so that's something I remember my father talked to me quite a bit about. Now, as I get older, I'm beginning to realize, if we become nationalists and shut off those borders, we're not really helping the situation. We're just endangering more people and giving more credence for these dictators to take selfish control over their countries. So,
right, yeah.
And you would think we would have learned during World War II, when we put the people who were from Japan in concentration camps here in the United States, and also refused to take refugees from Eastern and Western Europe who were in danger during the Nazi regime.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Exactly to your point, Bill and Callie, and a couple of thoughts that I had is, I'd like to remind folks in the audience, and thank you for tuning in if you're listening. One point I want to make is, this is not right versus left. This is not American versus immigrant. This is not American versus the other, or American versus un-American. Global migration is a human activity that has happened since, that's older than dirt, essentially. But what I'd like to say is, for that triangle in Central America, including El Salvador, absolutely the reason that we flee and we're here is because of U.S. intervention and destabilization of the Salvadoran government. That being said, I'm not placing blame. This is not about blame. This is really about taking action moving forward. And what's the solution? What's the humane and kind and loving solution, right? I think that's key. But there was U.S. intervention that destabilized the government. And the government of El Salvador, I would say, didn't behave at that time in an ideal way, let's put it that way. And so there is that issue as well. But, there may be folks listening thinking, why is it our responsibility to absorb these undocumented immigrants? Well, I wouldn't say this is the answer, but to put a light to this, the U.S. intervened, destabilized the government, and it did cause in that area unstable government, leading to an unstable economy and cascading down to unskilled workers and violence and lack of jobs and people fleeing at the end of the day, and that's still happening today. The other point is that I mentioned this is not about left or right, because I don't want to approach this and alienate folks. I really want to wide a discussion as possible and engage, especially people that completely disagree with me. And let's have a database discussion, and let's collect these stories. Let's talk about these stories to see what reality is. Right? These actual stories, they are the truth, and we are not getting to them. So how can we possibly have a reasonable discussion if we're not basing it on truth? And so I don't want to just engage people that agree with me. I want to engage people that also disagree. Some folks will never agree, and that's quite all right. But you know what? That's the beautiful thing about this country and the freedom that we enjoy here in the American country.
Right. And with that, I am going to have to call to mind, we are going to have to start wrapping up here, and not to be a totalitarian about this whole situation, because I don't want to have our listeners flock away, but we do have to end. Plus, we want to save something for our next conversation.
Absolutely, because you have got to come back.
Oh, yes. Yeah, we.
And I want you in person next time so I can give you a hug.
Definitely.
Absolutely. And I'm going to pre-order a mango smoothie.
You got it.
And I want to thank you for eloquently stating what I was trying to state earlier, is when you do accept those people into our borders, you begin a process of destabilizing that totalitarian government. Their economy eventually is affected when you don't have a consumer, you don't have workers. They become destabilized, and they become more volatile for a takeover and go back to democracy. And I think that's what we all forget about when we take sides and look at the immigration is a good thing. The fact that people are coming to the United States is a good thing. It's more consumer, it's more workers, and last time I checked, we still have a lot of wide open territories here. Right. So beautiful wide open territories. So with that, Dr. Mendoza, I got to tell you, we appreciate your time today.
So much.
When I do want to thank you for reaching out to us. We're so humbled that you did. And let's carry on this conversation at another time.
Absolutely.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm really humbled by the invitation and the platform. This is, not at all about me. This is an act of love to really sternly correct the environment that we're in now, and to really fill an unmet need, to speak to these stories and speak up for these folks that live in fear and anxiety, and I feel driven to do this. And I will give it everything that I can. So thank you for having me on. I look forward to seeing you guys and meeting you in person and that mango smoothie.
All right. Sounds good.
And we'll say goodbye for now.
Bye.
Bye.